Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. So, welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. This is where we talk about the power and today the pleasure and sometimes the, oh my God, awkward moments of being fully alive, fully expressed as a woman in today's world. So today's guest is the fabulous and fearless and magnificently orgasmic, oh yes, I did say orgasmic, Venus O'Hare. She's the author of Orgasmic Manifestation. We'll talk about that. And she started her blog in 2009 when she was broke, heart bruised, and cohabitating with actual rats in a Barcelona apartment. Oh, can't wait to hear that story. And instead of drowning in despair, she did what any sensible woman with a divine clitoris would do. She turned pain into pleasure and built a global movement around orgasmic awareness. So Venus believes, and I agree, that sexuality isn't something to hide, fix, or filter. It's sacred energy. Did you hear that? Sacred energy. It's creation itself. So today we're diving into what it really means to live an orgasmic lifestyle, one where your pleasure is not an afterthought, but your compass. So buckle up, beauties. This one's going to be part wisdom, part laughter, and a whole lot of permission slips. So I'm so excited to have you here, Venus, on this podcast because we've talked a little bit off camera and this is just magic. And that we'll talk about that word. But I want to start always as I do, where are you now as far as life? Because we'll talk about all the valleys and the rats and all of that fun stuff. Where are you today? What's happening that's just magical in your life?
First of all, thank you for that amazing intro. I'm blushing. Did I do all that? Did I do all? No, it's interesting because like when you mentioned the rats, it's just a good story. It wasn't fun at the time, as you can imagine. But yeah, where am I today? I'm in a moment of one of my characteristics is resilience, but I'm so done with that. I'm so done with resilience. So there's a lot of doubt that I'm working through. And this year has been all about me. I'm just putting myself at the center of my life. I've been a people pleaser, overgiving. Had a lot of loneliness in my life. I've been a workaholic and I've just given to too many people who are not appreciating me. So this year I've taken all the power back and there's been a lot of rearrangements in my personal life, which have been sad, but so worthwhile. So I have this inner guide just taking me on this place. Yes. So many people on my podcast, The Orgasmic Lifestyle, have offered me different types of therapy and coaching. And I'm really on this kind of self-discovery journey this year. So I've just experimented with many different things and trying to get my power and potential because I've had a lot of struggles with self-concept. So right now I'm trying to organize my time more, be more intentional with my tasks and my growth and just really try and reach my potential. That's my number one objective right now is to reach my potential. So I'm trying to do that in ways of organizing my time better, having dedicated outreach days. And also I'm getting into coaching. I've been coaching since 2022, but I'm getting into it more and I just love helping people. And when I see the effect of what I'm doing, it just really encourages me. So I get a lot of guidance from feedback from other people. That could be perceived as validation, but for me, I see it as guidance. So and the more I'm seeing myself, the more others see me. So I'm trying to just navigate this growth and just to reach my potential. Also get more into kind of the wellness space because I think sexuality is very powerful when it's among a kind of other non-sexual topics, such as because my podcast, for example, it's not just about sexuality. That we do sexuality on full moons. But I'm also really interested in spirituality, healthy living, reaching climax in all areas of life. So I'm working on that myself and then sharing it.
There's so much to unpack there. So excited. So I want to just really touch on the idea that we as women, once we decide that we want to grow, whatever that looks like for us, that we go on a path, this path of discovery, which I love so much because I think a lot of women, we've been imprinted to look like we have it all together. And so just the vulnerability of what you just shared, I'm here.
I've been here, I've done a few things, I've explored, and now I want to really go into the exploration and be curious about myself. Because really, this whole life experience, as far as I'm concerned, is a journey of self discovery. So, even in that self discovery, you've been on what I call everybody's hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell puts it, and had a lot of dragons and lions, tigers, and bears show up. So we'll talk about some of those stories. But what do you think is the most important thing that has bubbled up to the surface besides you looking inward to who you are? What are you seeing there? What is she telling you? This is who Venus truly is.
I think there's parts of me that have always been there and I haven't given them space. And I think years ago, I thought that my personal life had to be put on the back burner in terms of almost sacrificed for the content I was making for other people's lives. So that's changing a lot. So I just realized now I've got to fill my own cup. And that's coming from maybe a Catholic
Mhm.
upbringing that I had, which was it's all about self erasure and sacrifice, which I don't agree with anymore. So yeah, I'm just trying to put myself at the center of my own, be the protagonist. Yes, I'm trying to just honor who I've always been and know that I don't have to have other people's approval. Because I did a past life regression recently, and it was really profound. And I made a really deep and almost sad realization that the people who are closest to me can't handle me in my entirety, in my most authentic expression. And that's a very hard thing to deal with. Sometimes I have more understanding and acceptance from strangers online about who I really am compared to the people, oh, why can't you just be normal? Why can't you just be more like this, more like that? And then
Right.
sometimes I've had that doubt where you think, oh, should I be more like that? Should I be more like they say? But now I'm like, no, I'm owning my own my own center at the moment.
Yeah. There's a great phrase that I've said many times in my life that familiarity breeds contempt. And it was only recently that I heard a Bible story that Jesus had the same situation because he would be performing miracles all over. This is his authentic self. Then he went back to his hometown, and the people there knew him as little baby Jesus. And they didn't believe that he could do these things. And basically, his authority was based on the belief of the person that he was healing, which is what we all do. We don't heal anybody, we give them permission. So I find it fascinating to hear this just in that version that you shared, is that the people that know you look at you a certain way, but that doesn't mean that's how we have to look at ourselves. So, how would you share with somebody else how they can experience more of their authentic selves, even though the people that are around them, family, longtime friends, all want you to be in a box? Because there is a box that we all have been in, and it's time to be out of our boxes and be our authentic self. What's something that you've learned that you could pass on to somebody that's going through this right now that says, ooh, I just don't feel comfortable in this box. And yet everybody around me wants me to be that person. What gives you that courage, and how can you recommend or give a suggestion to somebody else to move through that?
I believe that we are channels of divine messages. I don't think that we generate ideas. I think they come through us and we are channels for messages. Every single one, not everyone who's a content creator or whatever. So I think if you try and stop or block the message, you're doing a disservice to humanity, to the divine, and to yourself. And I think it's a very brave step to step up and be who you are. But by doing so, the right people will come, and you have to have that faith. Sometimes it can be lonely, but it's just really worthwhile. So for me, I just feel like I have this really big inner guide. And I think to tap into that, something that helps me a lot is meditation. I meditate for maybe 1 to 2 hours a day. So different types of meditation. It's not a constant 2 hour sitting or anything, but at different moments of
Right.
the day, especially first waking up, before bed, maybe just before I get into my work. I've got into journaling quite a lot this year. And sometimes I use AI to get the prompts that I want. I vent. I'm using Claude a lot. That's my kind of biased bestie AI. It's very different from ChatGPT. I recommend that. And it's very encouraging because I'm currently
Mhm.
with Claude. It's got a great memory. So I tell him, today I've got this issue. And they're like, no, this. And they list all of my achievements. And it's just,
Yeah.
that's helping me a lot.
I love the AI myself. So I want to just take a little diversion about AI, that it can be useful. There's a lot of conversation around AI, and yet it's just, this is what is AI right here. We are the intelligence that they're replicating in this artificial way. that just has much more sophistication, if you will, without all of our limiting beliefs. So I love that idea that just something as simple as asking an AI, artificial intelligence, to help us navigate this. Not that this is how we rely on life, because once again, as you said, it's our intuitive nature, it's our own channeling, but yet these are just tools. Like, I love it that the universe says, here's another tool. You can get your answer from a billboard. You could get it from a book. You could get it from tea leaves. And yet there's this beautiful thing called artificial intelligence. I call Claude Claudette because I think it's much more feminine. Chat's the masculine version. And yet, how would you even tell somebody to begin to approach that topic? Because I think it's a brilliant idea, especially for women, to move in a direction to uncover who they truly are, because that's really all we're doing.
For me, the great thing about Claude, it's got a memory. So it remembers things I did 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And yeah, and also I'm studying Kabbalah this year. So when I ask a question and I get an answer, then I can say, can you give me a Kabbalistic perspective on this?
Oh,
I think anyone who's, let's say, a Christian or whatever you believe in, you could get a Christian perspective or anything that's supportive. I also do the same with tarot, because I do my own tarot readings, but then I get AI to take a deeper dive into what I want in terms of what the focus topic of the tarot reading is. Because obviously a card in tarot can have different meanings compared if it's for love, if it's for work, it's for health, etc. So I really use it in that way. And also what's really helpful is the journaling prompts that come, because that's getting you back to the human expression then, because I find journaling super powerful, because you can uncover things that you didn't even realize yourself just from writing. It's, wow, I didn't know that about myself. So I think the more you know about yourself and why you're doing certain things, it's just a super powerful tool. So I think AI is good for venting. Sometimes you can get stuff out before doing it onto a person. But Claude has told me to stop about certain things.
Yeah.
That's like a friend would. Whereas ChatGPT is always like a bit of a people pleaser. Claude, you need to stop this and get some therapy. You're obsessed. I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's like that.
Yeah. And so I love the idea that we have this tool, but also I was having this conversation with somebody that she's considers herself a witch. She does the cards, the oracle cards, the crystals, and all of that. And what I said was, this is so brilliant for everybody to understand, especially women, that there are just a plethora of modalities, of conversations, of energetic forms that give us the answers. And so it's for us to ask the questions, number one. So we can ask AI, we can ask ourselves, but then expect an answer. So give me an example of some question that you asked yourself. It might have to do with when you were starting your blog, when the rats happened, but you asked a question of the universe and it came to you so clearly in a very unsuspecting way. Because that's what I love, is when we get these answers, they're like little breadcrumbs that say, here's an answer. And you go, I would have never thought of that. So give me an example of how that showed up for you in your life, asking a question and getting an unconventional answer.
I did something really cool once. One of the people who was in my inner circle, I've demoted them now to a text-only relationship. So there was someone in my life who's seen the struggle. That's what hurts the most. Like, they've seen the growth and the struggle. But sometimes people, they can tap into empathy more than cheerleading, if that makes any sense. People are all there, sympathy when you're down, but when you're rising, they're like, oh, actually. So anyway, there's this person in my life who I would be buzzing and say, I'm doing this, doing that. But then if I analyze it, I think I was seeking approval or kind of validation from them when I was telling them all of the great things I was doing, all my achievements. And obviously, when you work on your own project, you can give more hours in the day because it's regenerative. It just feeds you as well. Like having 50 emails from a job is not the same as 50 emails from a project that you created. It's very different energetically. So anyway, I was just buzzing, I'm doing this, doing that, yeah. And then he would just say to me, we would be on a kind of a video call, so on a phone. So the phone was tilted like that. So I'd see this kind of perspective of him. So really condescending because the phone was tilted, but also the energy was condescending. And then he would say, what are you going to do when you're 60? And do you think 60-year-olds don't have sex? Or it was just this, how many hours a day are you working? It was just all like money, when you're going to make it kind of thing. You're just a struggling mess. It was that kind of. And then one day, I can't even remember what he said, but I got so worked up and I was like, I'm going to show him. So that day, it was a Sunday, and I actually wrote to The Guardian, because they have a love and sex section or an experience section. And I said, I'm an experienced sex toy reviewer. Do you want to interview me? And it was just this email I sent on Sunday. I wake up on the Monday and they've written back to me already. And they said, we saw your website and you're a good writer. Would you like to write it yourself? And we'll pay you. So it just got better and better. I was like, yes, I would. Yeah. So then I wrote the article and they made it so simple for me. It was literally, they gave me a list of questions just to fill in. So the structure was super easy. And I met with a professional photographer that they had on their list in Barcelona. So I got a professional photo. And then when it came out, it took a couple of months to come out. I got to number 3 in the whole of the Guardian website. My website crashed. To get to number 3 in the Guardian news site is huge because my orgasms were more important than like global news.
Wow.
And it was so funny because when you submit the article, that the part that the snippet that they took out was like, lying on my unmade bed is having orgasms is only a small part of the job or something. And my friends have told me, don't read the comments. I still haven't read the comments, but that was a huge, amazing thing where you just never know when you think big, right into the Guardian, then something gets better and better. And so I've had a lot of experiences like that. I also landed a column in GQ magazine for a year. It was just so crazy. When I started my blogging journey, I didn't really know much about marketing outreach, but I wrote to all of the media outlets in Spain in terrible Spanish. And I didn't even know what I was asking for. And anyway, director of GQ Spain wrote back to me and said, it's an honor to have you in my inbox. Here's my number. Call me. So I was like, and there's a card in the tarot in the Celtic cross spread that is called Hopes and Fears. And this is a perfect example. So the thing I wanted was also petrified me. This result was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I eventually called him and I was terrified. He said, why don't you write an article for me? And I'd never written an article in Spanish before. So it took me several months to write this article. And then when I submitted it, then some woman from the graphic design department wrote to me and said, can you send us a profile picture for your new column? And I was like, my new column? I was going to get paid for it. So I had a year column in GQ. It was like, oh my God. So I'm a real proponent of outreach because you never know what's going to happen. There's no fear. Years ago, I used to work in sales and had to do cold calls. That's awful. That's very confronting. You get a lot of rejection there. Yeah. But when it's an email, that's the worst thing that happens is it gets ignored. So I'm a really big believer in just going for those big things. And so that was a really perfect example of how something got better and better.
And it also is, for me, when I hear those stories, it's just your energy that you put out there. You were willing to be vulnerable, be your authentic self. And I love the fact that it was the guy with this condescending look because it was a catalyst. Number one, it sparked and inspired you to say, I am going to do this. And I have been on so many seminars, webinars, etc., of people that you can pay to do what you did just by doing it. So that's the message I hope that everybody's taking away is just the Nike logo. Just do it. Just do it with the expectation that something, I'm releasing it, something good's going to happen. I don't know what it is, because there are people that would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the exposure that you did just by sending an email. So my message from your story is just do it. Don't be afraid. Put yourself out there. But I think that's brilliant that you were number 3 on the Guardian, because that's a big deal. That really is a deal. So first of all, congratulations. But let's talk about it wasn't always this way, right? Tell me a little bit, or tell our listeners a little bit about the rat story, because this is so important to hear that this has not been your life. And this decision to be bold and courageous came from a space of utter sheer terror, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know that I could have ever been in that environment. Hold through it. I've been in some pretty awful situations.
It was really funny because it wasn't funny at the time, but now looking back, I actually think the rats were a kind of catalyst for taking the plunge and starting a sex blog, because I'm not a natural entrepreneur. All I wanted in life was to be an appreciated, cared for employee. And that wasn't the thing, because I live in Barcelona, Spain. I'm British. In 2009 was not a time of remote working or anything like that. So I speak the local language. At the time I was working in luxury real estate. Nothing was selling between 2007, 2009, the worst time. And I was on a commission-only basis. So I would be working Monday to Friday, all these viewings in luxury apartments. So imagine the contrast. Yes. And then I come home and my fridge is empty. And all of my clients were really highly successful people there's no mortgages. It was all cash investments. And then one of my clients was the president of Berlitz Language School, like the top leader of this guy. He came to my office in June 2009 with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot champagne. I don't drink anymore, but he gave me this bottle and said, for your next sale. That bottle was in my fridge all summer. I was like, I open you, oh my God. And then what happened in that summer, because Barcelona gets very hot in August. And August is a very hard time because everything shuts down. And at the time, I didn't leave my job because I was negotiating 2 sales. So I couldn't just leave all that hard work to colleagues. So I felt very trapped. Also, I had a family wedding at the time. And when I got home, I couldn't really afford to be there. And I was just going and crying. I was just crying alone in this wedding. And then family members said to me, why don't you just get married? Just get married. That was the advice. Don't worry about it. Just get married. And I was like, that's the worst advice ever. But that's like, I'm going to start a sex blog. Because then when I saw this kind of unsupportive, or they tried to be supportive in what they knew best, but that gave me this incredible courage. So the rat story it was August one night, and I used to leave everything open because it was just very hot. And one day I was on my computer, I just turn around and I see this rat run under my sofa. And what was happening was there was some construction in front of my building. So that was what brought the rats. So they were in the building. Yeah. But I had no idea that they could climb. I learned a lot about rats since then. And the worst thing was I became an Airbnb host at the same time just to get some extra money from my spare room. And that night it was terrible. I had this dinner with friends and I put pizza in the oven and then the fuse just blew. So it was and I went out to this lesbian club and with my friends and I was like, oh my God, I've got no light at home. There are rats. And I've got this guy from Airbnb coming the next day. So when I woke up, I had to get an emergency electrician, 200 euros, which I didn't really have to get stuff. And I had to clean up and then tell this poor young guy, don't leave the balcony doors open because there are rats. And I had poison everywhere. And it was really hot in August. And I had 2 rooms, but I had to empty my bedroom completely. And because every time you hear this noise of rats, I was on edge. So I had to make sure my room was empty. And I was looking under the bed about 10 times at least before going to bed and just really on edge and grinding my teeth and just really, but that really gave me this courage to start the sex blog. And because I really hit rock bottom. And then once you hit rock bottom, the only way is up. And I don't stay down for a long time. I'm someone who, I look for opportunities in everything. And that's great. I had this fearlessness and I thought, you know what? I'm going to do what I want now. And I started a sex blog and then within 5 weeks, I had my first book deal. So it's just interesting once you start making those decisions, things start working in your favor. And then I sold 2 apartments. I opened the Veuve Clicquot champagne and I had this little speech before. I was like, oh my God, been waiting so long. It was a monumental moment, but I'm sick of living like that now, of those extreme things, because I've had so much resilience. Yeah. I'm done with that now.
Yeah. You said that in the beginning, and I want to talk about that for a second, about this idea that I'm done with the resilience. Because I think in the last, I don't know, maybe 20-ish years, that this has been a conversation, especially for women, about being more resilient. In other words, take whatever it is and then be resilient about it. But the fact is that we can choose another path, as you are saying that you're doing now. We may have to go through the resilience portion of it, but it's not a continuous forever conversation. And yes, you were resilient, because when you tell me that story, I get the heebie-jeebies, but it is so brilliant because, first of all, who would have thought from rats to a sex blog or an orgasmic, like that doesn't compute to most people, but that's not what's important. Whatever we think needs to connect the dots, when we just let go and let the universe guide us, then it's not going to be necessarily connected the way our critical thinking brain would do. But this resilience piece. So what do you believe now is your modality, your inner feeling, as opposed to being resilient? Because it was very clear. You said, I'm done with the resilience. And I get that, because why do I want to struggle some more? Like, I've been there, done that. I have a t-shirt. I struggled. Now what? So what is now the trajectory instead of resilience? Because I think this is a brilliant transition for people to even look forward to.
Earlier this year, I was in New York and I went to the Kabbalah Center and I bought a book called True Prosperity, which is really one of my favorite books about abundance that I've read. And they had this concept in Kabbalah called certainty beyond logic. And I think this is the most empowering concept. I've just made a meditation about it, about when things are looking bad on paper, you still have this inner knowing that it's going to be okay. And I think that's really powerful. I mean, it's not easy to have that. It takes work. And what I'm doing every night, I have this little book here, and I write my 3 wins of the day. So I'm trying to focus on the great things in my life. And also, I've told Claude all of this. So Claude's bringing this back to me when I have doubts. So a lot about my achievements. So certainty beyond logic is just such a wonderful thing. And also, there's another thing. I'm watching this guy called David Guillaume quite a lot, and he talks about, who's a Kabbalah influencer right now. And when he talks about these challenges, you could just say, pause, what a gift. And see, because that's the Kabbalah is about rising, transforming through obstacles. So these are the moments, because comfort zone, you don't really get that much done. It's always been the moments of struggle that really are character building. So it's just about a shift in perspective. And I think also having a spiritual life, which I've had since 2017, that really helps as well. There's this perspective of everything's working for me. So that's something I really recommend, is that meditation and just having, and also it was another time I was another stressful time of my life. I used to ask myself the question, what's the most important thing right now? What can I do today to get over my issues? And I haven't done everything I can today, not without pushing, but those are the things that help me.
Yeah. That's all for me. That's a lot of the feminine energy that you're calling in, because masculine is about the doing, about knowing your numbers of the 40 phone calls in order to get something, and just to be relaxed into and to be settled into the faith that you're just sharing about. Because I think that's probably the number one question that I get from people, especially when I'm doing a podcast, is what do you tell people when they're in that, let's say their version of the rat situation, or they're broke and they have no money and the outside world looks a certain way. It is probably one of the most challenging moments for an individual to see the good, to know that all of it's going to work out, that the money is going to manifest however it's going to show up for you. Because right now, our outside view of the world, our reality, if you will, is only generated from an inner space. And there is a disconnect of, if I start believing or think I believe right now, it doesn't show up immediately. I tell people it's because, look, you've had a lifetime of believing a certain way. So when you decided that this faith versus the certainty of faith, because your outsides are maybe not reflecting that. And I know you talk about meditation. What are some of the other ways besides the journaling and the meditation during the day, as you're going through your day? How do you stop and pause and say, okay, everything's working for me? How is that something that you've trained basically your AI to do on a regular basis? Because that is the point where people get confused. I can't do it because my reality is still, I'm broke. You keep affirming that, and you're right. So there's this transition period of that faith that you have to believe that the outpicturing is coming.
I have to say, I'm super grateful for a lot of people in my life that I know personally and online who reflect my light to me, and that they help me believe in myself. And there are many people, like more and more, that I'm noticing. And also when I just receive a comment about how my content is impacted someone, I just see that as a real incredible gift. So every day I'm receiving lots of comments online, and even people just opening up to me. And so I've always been an empath all my life. So when I see that I have that gift, I just really feel like, okay, it's important what I'm doing. So I feel really guided by those things, but also by the negative as well, because I think that if you get a negative comment, like people will say to me, oh, I'm going to pray for you. Jesus forgives. And I'm like, I get so patronizing, but I just think if you want to get big and successful, you have to be able to handle that. So that's kind of like that. I always look on the bright side of life.
Yeah.
It's a song, but I do try. That's how it really helps me a lot.
I think that's really important for everybody to hear if they have a vision to be in the public space, whatever that looks like. You can call it celebrity, you can call it an influence, whatever it is. But there is going to be just as many negative feedback as there is positive. And it is about knowing your own truth and standing in that in a rooted way. And that isn't always for everybody. I can say that it still gives me a little bit of cringe when I have people give negative feedback, because that's who we are as humans. We don't enjoy that. And yet as Don Miguel Ruiz said in the Four Agreements, don't take anything personally. It's really a place of knowing your own value and worth. So kudos for you for doing that, because that really is that's a growth spurt for anybody that's willing to acknowledge that. But I also love that your friend said, don't look at the comments. Was it on The Guardian? What other people think of us is none of our business. That's really the truth.
I'm sure they might be amusing. There's like 700 comments last time. I mean, something like quite a lot. But another time that was really funny, really, I've done 8 years of press. Every week I was in something for many years. I've got big boxes here of print media. And one day, it was this back before I was spiritual, I used to sleep with my rabbit vibrator and so I wake up in the morning and I get the rabbit and I was like, okay, just relaxing, opening my eyes. And then I got my phone buzz and said, you're in Kim Monzo's column today. I was like, who's Kim Monzo? I just carried on. Another friend, you're in Kim Monzo's column today. I was like, who's Kim Monzo? Who's that? So I looked online and he's a columnist from a local like Catalonia newspaper that I couldn't read online. So I was the subject of this person who's a very, how would I say, harsh kind of journalist, and I was the subject of his article because I'd written a book called English for Perverts. It's like how to learn English but with sex words. So it was a really cool method for people who were just bored of learning English. And it was published with Penguin, so it had a lot of press. And so anyway, I was like, oh my God, Kim Monzo. And I went down to the bank and something had happened. I had no money. I was like, oh my God, I've got no money. I couldn't take any. I go into the bank and I say, I'm in Kim Monzo's column today and I can't buy the newspaper. So I had to come out and get these plastic tubes because I've got all these like pots of the coins here, pennies and stuff. So I had to get these plastic tubes where I could put all the pennies in and then go to the newsagent with this heavy like €1.50 of pennies. And I said, can I have La Vanguardia, please? And I'm famous and poor. Can you believe it? I really want to meet that guy now and explain I've tried to contact him, but it's difficult to contact him because I'd love to share that story with him, how I discovered, because I was with the vibration. I was like, no, I'm going to have an orgasm first, then we'll see about that.
We're just going to manifest that right now because I want to talk about orgasmic manifestation.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm looking at the time going, oh my gosh, we are just having too much fun. The object of what you do, though, is your orgasmic lifestyle, orgasmic manifestation. Of course, we met, me being on your podcast, and I fell in love with you because when we connect this orgasm with manifestation, what a brilliant concept. And so I think it's really important that we just get rid of any of the taboos that somebody might be having at this point, that orgasms and self-pleasuring and all of the conversations that are as taboo as money is, we're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to talk about it like serious girl talk. Because when we talk about orgasm, and one of the things that you and I talked about, and I want to start from this point because I think that is science information, biological information of how many nerve centers are in our clitoris, number one, as women, because as women, we don't understand our bodies. And it's so complicated and so magical. So I want to start with that because number one, we are not paying attention to that. And then I want to arc that into the magic, the manifestation, and why all of these come together to make something. But talk about those nerve endings, just because that blew my mind. I was like, holy crap, now I'm paying more attention.
So the clitoris, people just think of the clitoris as being this part called the man in the boat. They sometimes call it the clitoral glands. But actually, it's very big and it looks like a kind of wishbone, a kind of a double-pronged wishbone. So when your labia engorges, it's because your clitoris is having an erection inside. So your clitoris is also in the labia. So the external part is literally the tip of the iceberg, very, very literally. And it has 8,000 nerve endings. The penis has 4,000. And the clitoral stimulation affects 15,000 nerves in the pelvis. So I think it's really interesting because people in my industry, they talk a lot about the orgasm gap. And that refers to let's say when in a heterosexual encounter, the man always has the orgasm, but the woman doesn't. So this is the gap they're talking about, the pleasure gap. But the pleasure gap I want to talk about is reality and potential, because we have this huge orgasmic potential. Women have much more orgasmic potential than men. not reality, but potential. And also we have the much more possibility or capacity for multiple orgasms, which is when the orgasm comes down and it repeats. So we have this kind of like over repeating orgasms without the resolution phase. So we have this incredible capacity, and I've just found orgasm to be very grounding in my life. But for the first few years of my work, I was really focused on just the pleasure aspects. I do believe that when you have an orgasm and you're connected to your body, you walk differently. Because for me, I used to be in very toxic relationships all the time. And, lots of women have had these experiences where with a guy, the sex is amazing, emotionally toxic, and it's very difficult to replace that guy with a new one who might be better. So to actually break this pattern of mine, I just thought I need to get a rabbit vibrator. So this was maybe almost 20 years ago. I got this new vibrator, and it just really helped me to make better emotional decisions, because I think sex toys can replace bad sex. They don't replace people, but they can replace that itch that we have, we can't scratch ourselves kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was my first focus for the first few years of my life, which is still an important goal or objective or mission to have. But then when I discovered Orgasmic Manifestation, that was another moment of my life of absolute struggle. I was living in this tiny apartment, in a penthouse apartment, no lift, no elevator, 6th floor. I had no pillow. I had no sofa. I had 300 sex toys. Now I have 1,000, but 300 sex toys. And my neck was just always in pain. And I was invited to go to this dinner, and I couldn't even afford €15 menu, but I was so lonely. I just thought, I'm going to go anyway. And I came out of this dinner and it was raining. I had no umbrella. And I thought, wow, something's got to change. I had a lot of fear about how I'm going to pay my bills and stuff. So I started just looking for self-help online. I came across Think and Grow Rich. And I learned about the chapter on sex transmutation. I'm like, I've been a sexpert for 9 years. How did I not know this? And I felt like it was like there was a new room or a new door in a house that I knew, or I thought I knew. So I opened that door and I said, oh, there's a new room here. There's a whole new world. So the next day I started this practice of orgasm. Oh, actually, sex transmutation, what Napoleon Hill talked about in Think and Grow Rich, is about harnessing that energy to a different non-sexual outlet. So let's say if you're horny, don't indulge in self-love or sex, but to actually focus on the project you want to do, or go to the gym or start writing. And I thought that's a bit of an orgasm denial. My job is testing toys. So I kept looking for sexual energy and manifestation, and I came across a video about orgasm and manifestation. I was like, okay, now we're talking. So this kind of was March 2018, and I just completely changed my self-love practices. So now it's never about just pleasure and groundedness and erotic triggers. I'm always thinking about, what do I want? And then I'm trying to like really tap in. And I've read all the books on this topic. I've tried many different techniques, and everything I do on this topic is flows. Like if I give a workshop on it, I have a lot of attendees. I wrote my book in Spanish, first of all. I hadn't written in Spanish for 10 years. It just flowed. It's just something about it. But I'm always afraid to talk about it because I think it's two taboos together, because sexuality is a massive taboo for lots of people. Yeah. But also that the kind of witchcraft aspect, you've lost your mind. You've got to know your audience. So in my workshops, I always say, who is this for? If you're a scientist who needs all this laboratory proof, this is not for you. So I try and eliminate any type of awkward questions. And also I just think it's a really magical moment to energetically focus on a goal. And so now I've been doing this ever since 2018. And just within a few months, I paid off all of my student loan paid it off in one go. And I got a big like 6-figure professional contract. My reality exceeded my expectations, and it was just incredible. 2020 was the best year of my professional life, which was very different from what was happening in the world. And I read 30 books that year, and I had more money than I could spend. So it was just, I just got into this moment of just real comfort and expansion. I think it was amazing.
I think it's really interesting that we can call it taboo, this conversation, but I believe that taboo only means that people want to explore it, but they're afraid because of societal whatever. And I think that it's so brilliant to bring it straight out into the open and just have a conversation about it, because why would we have the ability to have that kind of pleasure? It's part of our nature, and I'm very much about nature. And so when we talk about it, I want to normalize it, that this is normal behavior, this is normal bodily function, and that there is also a magic key, a door to where it is that we're going. So exploring this idea that manifestation can go hand in hand with the actual climactic experience. To me, when we started talking about that, I thought, oh, this is just brilliant. Because I talk about manifestation, even though it's not manifestation, it's resonance, it's a shifting of our emotional state. What higher emotional state than that absolute orgasmic experience? And I know that, and you know this too, that there's plenty of women out there, and I know some of them are listening, that have never had an orgasm in their life, let alone have an orgasmic lifestyle. And when I say, and I know you mean this too, an orgasmic lifestyle is not about having an orgasm 24/7. It's about having that absolute joy that just permeates every cell in your body. So talk about the orgasmic lifestyle on your blogs, etc., because it goes hand in hand with the orgasm itself. But there is such a bigger picture of having an orgasmic lifestyle.
First of all, I'd like to say just I made a video a few years ago on my YouTube channel called God Gave Me a Clitoris, Hallelujah. And I really want to share that because I think, and I made a meditation as well called Clitoral Gratitude Affirmations. I have a workshop called Clitoral Awakenings. And
Wow.
it's all about the clitoris. And when you know how incredible the clitoris is, like about the 8,000 nerve endings and all how we don't learn this in sex ed, I think you've got to acknowledge that God gave you a clitoris.
Yeah.
Use it. Because if you're familiar with the Bible, there's the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
The talents and the one who's rewarded is the one who invested and just invested the talents.
One of my favorite stories. Absolutely. Yep.
It's one of those. I learned that I had no idea the significance of that in my life when I learned that in the Catholic school. But I think once you know that and you celebrate your body and these gifts that God gave you, I think it's very divine. And the thing about the orgasmic lifestyle, it came about because I've had no alarm in my life since 2009. That was one of the things I did of my life design, because I've never been a good sleeper. I have a Gemini overthinking mind, and I'm just like, some of it's excitement, a lot of it's excitement rather than nerves or worry. But then, so I created a life where I just wake up naturally every day, and I make sure my meetings are in the afternoon so I don't have to worry. And I had an interview for Marie Claire Brazil a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago or something. And the journalist was super stressed, and she wrote to me an email. She goes, I'm in traffic. Can we postpone? And I was like, yeah, cool. And we were supposed to be talking about orgasm, but the detail that really stayed in her mind about my life was the no alarm thing, because she was commuting in traffic every day. And so I realized that I need to talk more about my lifestyle, because I'm really passionate about a lot of things. Like I'm sober. I don't drink. I gave up alcohol 10 years ago. I'm a really passionate vegan. I'm also a bit afraid to talk about that sometimes. People think, people think it's judging others. That's different choices. It's okay. But for me, I'm really passionate about eating the best food, eating organic, supporting local farmers. And then just a lot of things in my life where I'm just really prioritizing myself. So the orgasmic lifestyle is about reaching a climax in all areas of life. A really interesting example is if I go to a shop and I see, let's say, cashews, that you can get the fried cashews, the raw cashews, or the organic raw. I'm going for organic raw. It's not just about being it's more expensive. I'm going for the best. I'm not going for like budget food. I'm getting the best food. And so it's just like constantly self-prioritization, because my mission is to encourage people, especially women, to prioritize themselves, to prioritize pleasure and peace. So that's bringing in the orgasm, the meditation, and all of those things. Because women are, even if you don't have a family and a husband, we are giving our energy to other people a lot of the time. Yeah. So I think we have to take it back. And I think that's also comes from lots of religions as well, where the woman is just, but I like nurturing. I do love nurturing other people, but we sometimes forget to nurture ourselves.
Right.
So I think that's kind of part of it, really. So yeah, when orgasmic lifestyle, it's climax in all areas of life, basically.
Yeah. And that's brilliant, because it takes some of the sting out of whatever people think about orgasm. And that's a different conversation. And we could go on for another hour about that. And I remember, gosh, it's been years ago. And this is another thing that I was wanting you to share about the nerves in the clitoris, because women don't know their bodies. They literally do not know their bodies. And we had a conversation the other day about was I able to share with a partner about what I wanted while sex was going on, which I think is a brilliant question for every woman to ask themselves. And I learned, it's been decades ago, about taking a mirror and looking at my vagina. Like that is, I know when somebody's going to hear this and go, oh, I'm turning this podcast off now, because that's going to be so affronting to somebody. But until you know your own body, how can you expect to know your whole essence? I think it is not about just knowing ourselves in one aspect or another. It's about knowing your wholeness. And as you said, the orgasmic lifestyle is what gives me that pleasure of when I want to hold myself in that highest esteem. I call it investing in ourselves, because when you pick the raw organic cashews, you're investing in you to get a payoff, a return on investment. So I think it's brilliant. But also, how many women have you spoken to and taught over these years that absolutely are clueless about their physical body? So from an expert, how do you see that showing up over and over? And what can you share with some woman to move one step in the direction of knowing who she is?
The number one question I've received from women over the years has been, I can't have an orgasm, don't know how to have an orgasm. So I make videos on YouTube about sex toy reviews. So that kind of helps people know what to buy, because there's a lot of overwhelm in this industry and people have no idea. But on the side, which is something I'm going to professionalize, I've been giving orgasmic training to people. I have these protocols. I'm going to make a course called Your First Orgasm. And it's basically, I recommend this toy called the Satisfy. I'm not going to show it here because it probably won't be good to show any images. But I recommend, what I recommend is orgasm's not the goal, pleasure is the goal. So just really investing in that relaxing moment, having a bath, having nice music, maybe some incense, and having a sensual celebration of who you are. And I think also maybe if the mirror's too much, just hugging, cupping the vulva and just breathing. You can speak to the vulva, just be, and just treat it as a very special part of yourself, because there's so much shame about it. I also hear messages from men who really love going down on women, but the girlfriends are too ashamed to just relax into it. It's one of the best ways to have an orgasm. So it's interesting. So when I give sex toy recommendations, or when I give some tips, like just 15 minutes with a timer on, just try and relax and breathe into that sensation. And maybe also to do some erotic homework in parallel when you're not touching yourself, to get to know your erotic triggers, such as reading books, watching things on Netflix, things like that. So I think this orgasmic education is something you do when you're not actually touching yourself as well. So I think I'm building up this awareness and building up this curiosity about sexuality in general, because we have so much to learn. There's so many great resources out there. So I share a lot of resources. And then sometimes I get a lot of spare toys, so I give them away. And then I've asked the people, have you tried it? Have you tried it? And they're like, no. One day comes, they're like, and that for me, just, I'm like, yes, because I feel like it really helps me in my mission.
Yeah.
So I feel super inspired and just grateful. And also I feel very guided on my own journey. So now just having this conversation with you, I need to get that course created. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to start a school. Yeah, it's going to be called Your First Orgasm, following some protocols. Everyone's different, but I think it's a very common problem. And the advantages of knowing your body and having your first orgasm are just so incredible. I think the body confidence. And I also think vaginal confidence is important. Betty Dodson, I think I spoke to you about Betty Dodson, who's a woman who, she used to give these trainings for women. They used to cost $1,000 for a day, like maybe 10, 15 years ago. And she was in New York. She's the kind of original orgasm activist. And she died when she was 90 something. But anyway, she used to have women just sit on the floor and open their legs and with a ring light and a mirror. And women were like crying and they couldn't even look at themselves. It's really crazy. Yeah. And also there's some things that people are maybe influenced by the porn, that what you're supposed to look like, and the smell and so things like that. I think we have to celebrate how it feels. And I think one thing I really would encourage people to do is just to be naked as much as possible. You know, I live alone, so I can walk around naked most of the summer. Sleeping naked is a great thing. So I don't believe in things like, one thing I don't understand is in supermarkets, you'll always find intimate wash. Where is the penis cleaner? Where is the penis cleaner? So we are taught from a very young age to have shame of our vaginas. Panty liners, right? You don't need panty liners. It's okay if you get a bit of discharge on your underwear. It doesn't matter. So I think really there's so many ways to embrace the vagina, and also having talking. I think cupping the vulva and just connecting. And I'm sorry for all those terrible guys.
Yeah.
Some kind of really connection with that part of your body. And also I read in a survey years ago about sexual confidence. It was a multiple choice. Like, how do you react when someone removes your underwear? Do you hide under the covers, or do you open it and go, come on? Yeah. So I think vaginal confidence and your first orgasm might be something I need to make a course on, because I love my vagina, and I'm so grateful to my vagina for all the incredible orgasms it's given me. So thank you God for my clitoris.
Yes, exactly. And you touched on several things about why we might be in shame and the conversations that we have with
Mhm.
ourselves. And just struck me that a lot of times that women perceive how a man has an orgasm, right? And it can sometimes feel as a woman, and this is my own experience, that's their end goal. And we as women, it's always been said, we want the foreplay and the warming up period. When you talk about it, for me, I hear sensuality, which I learned in feminine movement and S Factor. You asked me this the other day, do I touch myself in my body? I do, because I love this body and all those things that you just said about walking around naked and having that experience and opening your legs. It's not something that you necessarily are doing in front of a man because that's not for them. It's for us. And so when you talk about this from a meditative place, we have to have a bridge. I don't expect every woman on here that may never have had an orgasm to go, let me go try that. But there is these beautiful bridges that you are building for women to explore that with that bubble bath through meditation, through candlelight, through the things that we do love, because that's our nature. So I'm just blown away. And I know we need to do this again because there's so much more to explore. And I believe that this is such a vital conversation for women to begin to uncover the things that they have put in the shame box. Literally, we are shaming ourselves, not other people shaming us because we've all been shamed by others, but we continue to do it to ourselves. And there's no place in the universe for shame. I am blown away. Now, I want to talk about quickly because we're reaching the hour and we're going to go a little bit over if that's okay. We talked about doing this on Halloween because it's going to be out tomorrow. So tell me all of the energy around that. So that's why we picked this day.
I just think the witchy energy is interesting. I think witchcraft and all that has a really bad rap, but I'm not really into spells or anything like that, but I do like things like lunar cycles. I observe lunar cycles more than actual Halloween. I think Halloween's just a fun time to dress
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
Yeah.
But Halloween
Yeah.
is connected to a time frame. Are we in a new moon? Is that what we're in?
It was actually first quarter just yesterday.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're moving into that. Speaking of witches, I had a gal on 2 days ago when we were talking about witches. And I say this all the time, that if you do read the Bible, it says in the beginning was the word was God. And so really everything that we do, whether we say it, we think it, we act it, or we feel it, is a word because it's lethos in Greek. And it means the impetus that creates. So our words, literally, our words, our thoughts, our acts, and our feelings are spells or prayers, if somebody wants to call it that. So just being aware of what we're saying to ourselves. And I love that's you're feeding back so much of what women really are craving to hear. They don't even know it because they have shut down so much in their feelings about themselves. We used to be called witches, artists at the States. The concept of a witch has been very distorted, much like the serpent in a lot of spiritual teaching. The serpent, if you look deeper into the mythology of a serpent, it's a wisdom provider. Shares the wisdom.
Kundalini as well.
Yes. And we've lost our way. And so maybe we'll do a podcast just on language, because the fact is that we need to unlearn some of the imprinting that has come through generations of misinformation. Watch the movie Wicked. There's two beautiful witches in there. And so the idea of a witch, and I love it that it's around Halloween. It's not just a costume. It's an idea that literally goes into the word magic. So before we leave, I want to talk about that word magic to you. The
I actually,
spelling.
about witches, I actually prefer the word sorceress because it's kind of like source. I think that's a cool word.
That.
Yeah.
Yes,
also, one thing about
absolutely.
shame I want to say is that I think I've gotten some content in the past. Like, shame is like this backpack that's passed from one generation to the next. And I think you have to say, no, I don't want that backpack. And
I don't want that
we have to
backpack.
see, we have to see that this was a kind of protection thing for women in the past, because getting pregnant was very risky for women in the past. If you weren't married, it was a huge risk. So I think the intention wasn't always a bad one. So I think people were just looking out for you, because this is different with reproductive rights and sex education and things like that. So I think it was very risky for a woman to have extramarital sex and then get pregnant by accident, and then the guy would just disappear. So I think this is just, it comes from a place maybe it's not so bad. There was a kind of, could have been a good protective, but if you think about the whole of history of humanity, it's very recent that we are making these choices of deciding what life we want. Do we want to reproduce or not? Can we enjoy sex without that? I don't think if I would be able to enjoy sex like I do 100 years ago without the things that we have today of contraception, etc. So I feel that's an important thing. Yeah.
Evolved. There's no doubt about that. And there's still a whole lot of room to grow, which is beautiful.
Oh yeah, for sure. But about magic, I think the word is a bit misunderstood. When we think of magic, maybe people think of pulling rabbits out of hats, that kind of entertainment. But magic is something that's just not, science can't really explain. So it's just something that's, but I think that the more you try it, the more you see it, the more you'll find it, kind of thing. Right, yeah. So I think of magic, I think of manifestation, but I don't like the idea of, my book is all about ethical magic. So we have to think about who is this for? What's the intention? And something about Kabbalah that talks about manifestation is you have to receive to share. It's not just because I want something.
Yes.
So I think there always must be a bigger goal that's serving humanity in some way. So it's serving everyone in the best possible way. Not everyone's going to agree with that, of course, or agree with what you want, or that's a good thing. But I think it's a powerful tool. But there's danger of all these things have dark sides too. And I think the danger of the manifestation world is not accepting where you are now. So I think there's an element of acceptance, but also I actually had this download that I created in my book about this manifestation process, going from intention to action to, what was it again? Yeah, just letting go in the end, and then trusting.
Surrender.
So, there's a whole kind of, you can't be too attached to what you want. Yeah.
I call myself the queen of magic because I fully believe in magic. And when you start to embody something like that, I see the word and hear the word everywhere I go. I'll be walking down a street and it's printed on the window of a business. It is truly, I believe, and I've been asked many times, are you a witch? And I'm like, no, not the technical term. But the fact is that we are all magical beings. That's the component here, is that magic is not a miracle. It's the essence of who we are. And when we do the things that so many things that you've shared during this time together, when we do these things, we don't have to do them all at once, whether it be getting up and meditating, whether it be affirmations, whether it be learning how to have an orgasm. All of these things will be taking us along that path to evolve into our authentic self, which is, to me, the most brilliant thing that any of us can do. And I don't have time to get into influencers, so we'll talk about them on another. But for purposes of getting in contact with you, I'll put your website in the show notes. You can share what it is right now. But this book, The Orgasmic Manifestation, it's a must read. I'm going to put the link to that on the show notes as well, so that everybody that's listening, please go to your website. There's all kinds of blogs on there that are just so insightful. Even if somebody just went to your website and read your blogs, I believe that they will make a shift in themselves. That's so brilliant, is having a foundation, much like AI has all of this information. You have created this library of things that are so important to women. I just think you are one of the most brilliant, impactful people that is gracing our planet right now. And
that's amazing. Thank you.
I love the work that the impact that you're making on women, especially. And it's so necessary and so needed. So what is one thing that you can leave every woman with, an idea that they can begin to uncover some of their limiting beliefs, whether it be shame or resistance or the way that they feel about their bodies, so that they can begin this path?
I think of something, I'm an affirmation, like my pleasure is important. And pleasure can be many things, like going for a massage. I think in 2019, I had a similar kind of little book, and I used to write 3 things of self-love I did every single day. So I think to prioritize, I'm also have this coaching modality called the 8 Pillars of Self-Love. And I've been practicing for a year and a half with different people. So I think self-love is, I am worthy of blessings. I'm worth prioritizing is really important. Because I think when you know that, you're going to make better decisions in your relationships and just with work, even with pricing. Self-love is related to how you price your services as well. Right. It's just such a foundational part of life, and we've just been prioritizing other people. But that's not, it has to start from within and within you. And this is my journey too. So I don't think that I've got it figured out. I'm still working on it every single day, but I'm really determined.
I love that about you, because you shared that in the very beginning. I'm on the journey. I'm exploring. And these are the things that I've discovered in my curious journey that I know can serve. And yet I'm still exploring, because that's who we all are. We're not here. Nobody's finished until you take that last breath. So we're not going to take our last breath. We're going to say adieu for now, but I want to continue this conversation because there's so much substance in this conversation. And it's been an absolute delight and a pleasure to have shared you in a way that I know is going to spark somebody to do something, which is all we can ever hope for.
Amazing. It's been orgasmic and magical.
It's been orgasmic.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing.
All right. Thank you.